wonderful day, John. It's a chilly Texas morning. It's chilly Texas afternoon. And welcome, one and all, to the new and improved Rage Select podcast. It's so new and it's so improved. I'm Jeff.
I'm John.
Ask me how I've improved this podcast.
How have you improved this podcast?
It's going to be shorter. No more marathon 2.5 hour podcast. No, I'm cutting the news down. We're going to try to make this 30 minutes and 30 minutes, and then we're going to be fucking done with a podcast.
Boy, was I the wrong person to choose for this.
I agree wholeheartedly. But so, hey, yeah, just to let people know before we get started, we're trying this out as an experiment. I was noticing the other day that the podcast takes up a lot of our time. And a lot of the podcasts I listen to are quite a bit shorter, so I figured why not streamline and just try to cut some of the chaff out of the podcast. It would help if we were only answering 2 questions and only dealing with a few of the major stories that came out instead of just saying, hey, the release date for X got pushed back. Like, for example, this week they resurrected Avalanche Studios.
Oh, hey.
Who used to make Disney Infinity. Now Warner Brothers Interactive has got them working on the new Cars game. Normally in the past I would have talked about that, and it would have gone something like me saying what I just said and then like, that's cool, and then you going, yeah, and then that was like time that we could have not had in the podcast. So anyway,
but now that explanation took up all that time.
It is. I know I'm working against myself, and I'm not. You guys have to stick with me. But what I really wanted to start out by saying this is, hey, everybody, go down to the comments and let us know what you think. We're probably going to cut out a lot of the getting to know you stuff. And then, every week I was just looking up a movie trailer just to have something to put in the thumbnail. I think we're just going to try to stick to news. We're going to try to stay on point. We're going to try to do like the top 3 or 4 to 5 news stories that we're able to see in a week instead of just all the rest of it. So let us know what you think.
I'm on board if you are.
Yeah. It would be great. It would give me a lot more time to be able to do things like those complicated intros that I did with Resident Evil 7 this week. So, in the spirit of keeping things fast and furious,
Vin Diesel style,
just jump right in and say that today Square Enix and Marvel announced that they've got a partnership together.
Yeah.
And that Square Enix is going to be making some Avengers games.
It pissed off some people.
Like who?
Square Enix, like yesterday, was online going, oh, we got some big announcement tomorrow, and all you fans of Square Enix are not going to want to miss this. It's a huge announcement. And everyone went, oh, finally, they're going to put out the release date of Kingdom Hearts 3. That's obviously what it has to be, because that's the thing they haven't done yet.
No.
And then this was out, and everyone was like, what the fuck?
No.
However, I and many other websites are like, oh, cool, Marvel's coming back to consoles.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. Okay, so the trailer is just a lot of like, there's nothing there. It's just a lot of like blown up, like,
I was more
shield,
impressed with the company, with the developer names at the beginning of the trailer than the actual trailer itself.
Yes, and those developers are Crystal Dynamics, who've been doing the Tomb Raider games recently, and Eidos Montreal, who've done Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
Yes.
This announcement is basically that Marvel and Square Enix are getting together to create a series of Avengers games.
Yes. The first one, it's tentatively project called the Avengers Project.
Yes.
And it has the tagline of reassemble.
Yes. Hashtag reassemble.
And they said that it's supposed to come out sometime in 2018, which a lot of people pointed out that's also the same year that the Infinity War is supposed to come out, so maybe it might have some tangentially tied element to it. Maybe it doesn't.
Let me tell you,
if they're smart, it won't.
Let me tell you why this news in particular makes me fucking hella excited. One, this is a licensed property given to a full developer or a full publisher, but Square Enix is not some Focus Interactive bullshit, right? This is a full publisher with seasoned veteran developers developing it.
Yes.
Like both Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics have been around for a long time. They do good work. Like we may not always like the tenor of I don't know, Mankind Divided I had some issues with, but this is not shovelware license game. This is not your standard video game license game bullshit. This is some big names, big developers doing I feel like I'm going to slip into my Trump voice at any moment, doing huge things. That's bad. And I think that's great because the video game industry's history with making movie tie-in games has been awful. It's just been awful.
I don't think it's going to be a movie tie-in, though, because, they said that it'll have its own original story. And so I'm assuming that it's not, but I'm thinking if it's going to be tied in any way, it'll be like more of a thematic tie.
That's fine. As far as I can tell, like if they don't want to stick slavishly to the movie and they want to make, they realize, okay, well, the movie we need more parts that make good video games, not good movies. That's great. But all this is great because I have been on this podcast for the last 2 years saying, why the fuck doesn't Marvel go get somebody to make some tie-in games for all these movies? Every one of them. Doctor Strange would have made a great game. Guardians of the Galaxy would have made a great game. Not that Telltale bullshit, but like a flying around, shooting people, Mass Effect style video game. Like Captain America. We had, and before you guys pointed out, there were those other games, and not all of them were terrible, but none of them were
great.
None of them were giving these properties the care that they deserved because. Ant-Man would have made a great video game. Can you imagine like an adventure game
where you have to shrink and
grow at will? Yeah. There's like enemies, and some require you to be small, and some require you to be big.
The other thing they did say in the announcement is that this is just the first of many games,
right?
Not necessarily Avengers games, but Marvel property games.
Okay,
so I think that's also great.
I couldn't be happier about this if you asked me.
It's a lot to be excited for because you've got to think about it. Marvel has, outside of the re-release of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom and the Ultimate Alliance games,
right.
The re-release of those, Marvel hasn't had a console game like since Captain America.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The last one might have been
the first Avenger.
Yeah,
this is a huge thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Next up, we had a new Mass Effect Andromeda trailer, the official cinematic trailer, too. And this is, in my humble opinion, the best trailer they've put out so far for Mass Effect.
I agree with you on that.
There have been a lot of, there have been some that have more gameplay, and there have been some that have more, like, specifications or, like, here's some mechanics. But this trailer is what I feel like should have been the first trailer that I saw for Mass Effect Andromeda. Because it starts, and it establishes in, like, 10 seconds, hey, we're out here, we got all these people, we need to find a new homeland, and then, boom. Here's the enemy, the Archon. He looks like fucking alien with a halo on, and he's fucking us up. But guess what? We're a team, and we're Mass Effect, and we're gonna go do stuff. And you'll never survive. We got a Krogan. I've got an army. We've got a Krogan.
Well, it was very much like you'll need an army to survive, and he goes, we don't need an army. We've got a Krogan.
Yep. And it was like, and they showed, like, I was just so happy to see, I don't think up until now, outside of the Asari with the blue, with the black eye thing, that we've seen the rest of the team. And here, it's like in this trailer, we saw who are the Morden people?
The
Solarians, and we saw some Garrus people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten all my Mass Effect lore.
I know.
But yeah, there's a few we've seen this. There's a lady here with the short hair. There's African American guy with dreadlocks or black guy with dreadlocks. There's a Krogan, and then at the end there's just this big old action montage, and it's set to a bunch of music, and it looks great.
Yeah,
so
looks great. I'm excited. I'm actually really excited for this game, and I can't wait to play it. And this trailer did exactly what I felt it needed to do.
Yep.
And I think it did it better than any of the previous trailers.
Yep.
And that's not to say the previous trailers didn't make me want to play the game. They did, but this did a better job of it.
There's also probably one of the best Archer phrasing moments in this entire trailer is like there's this part where the main character and the blonde haired girl start making out, and it's right around the same time that she says, "This is why we've come." And I'm like, oh, Mass Effect, come on, that's too easy. But yeah, I'll be honest, I've been a little bit meh about Andromeda. This is what I needed to see. I needed something to get me emotionally invested. This trailer did just that. Speaking of being emotionally invested, actually, no, I've done the wrong segue. Speaking of, that's a good thing, but I'll tell you something that I feel that Mass Effect Andromeda is doing, which I don't really like, which is this EA Access bullshit.
Oh, that, yeah.
So if you sign up for EA Access, you can start playing Mass Effect Andromeda on March 17th, the Friday before the Tuesday that it launches. Or is that a Tuesday, March 21st?
I don't know.
But the catch is that you can only play for 10 hours. And I'm kind of like, this brings to mind one of those kind of shitty EA you've missed the point things. Like, okay, I fundamentally disagree with a company that wants to nickel and dime me to get early access to their... I mean, early access is one thing, but signing up for their dumb service, which I don't really feel is worth it, and then being rewarded with the game 4 days early, okay, you can make a case for that. Except that you can only play it for 10 hours. That there's a time restriction on how much you can play it early, because I feel like they haven't thought this thing through. Or they're like, well, we'll give access to them early, but we don't want people spoiling the ending before the game even comes out. like you can't have your cake and eat it too, EA. Like that's kind of a shitty thing. Like if I signed up for this service, I feel like I'd be a little upset that it was like I paid for this service, I'm getting early access to this game, but then 10 hours in a Mass Effect game, that's like right when things are starting to get really fucking good, right?
Yeah.
And then the game's just like, nope, bye, see ya.
Come back on release day.
Yeah. So I mean, I also don't like it that it's not on the PS4, which I realize is Sony's fault, not EA's fault. But the PS4 is my primary console. Like, I don't want to buy an Xbox One, or I don't want to play Mass Effect on my Xbox One or my PC. I want to play it on my PS4 because it's like my primary game console.
I mean, that was a Sony choice. Sony didn't, EA went to Sony for the whole access thing, and Sony went no. And then Microsoft went, yeah, fuck yeah, we'll do that. We don't care.
Yeah.
But I don't really have an opinion. I don't have a need for the service. I mean, I think there are elements of the service that I think are cool, like getting the access to games via the vault that they have, where you get basically access to their older titles.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. But yeah, I don't
know. I tell you what, to a consumer, it's probably a take it or leave it proposition. For me, running Rage Select, it's one of those things where I feel like I should do that so that I can get my content up early, but I don't want to have to do that. It's kind of the same thing I was talking about last week with Nintendo and pre-orders, where I'm like, I kind of feel fundamentally, because I paid an extra $20 for the Battlefield 1 like early to the front edition, because they had this bullshit where the version that came out on Tuesday was only this collector's edition, and then the actual just straight up retail version came out like on Thursday.
Oh, weird.
And I didn't realize that when I went to go buy it at the store, and was like, fuck, I got to pay an extra $20. So I'm just not a big fan of this whole nickel and diamond for access thing. And this one kind of pisses me off, because I feel like if you're going to nickel and dime for access, nickel and dime it for real. Like, give me full access to the game 4 days early.
Yeah.
Like some other companies have done that in the past, where it's, if you buy the collector's edition, or MMOs used to do that, right? Where if you like pre-ordered it, or you were in the beta or whatever, you would get access to it early. And I like that, but don't pussyfoot around, EA. Next up, Dark Souls 3, The Ringed City. The
DLC.
Second DLC for Dark Souls 3, the last DLC. And if From Software is to be believed, this will be the last piece of Dark Souls content that should exist. Now, I feel like saying that is as ridiculous as saying...
Well, they did say there always could be another Dark Souls game. It just won't be by Miyazaki.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't want there to be more, but I feel like the community would be... I don't know. The community there will only stay sated for so long, but... Yeah. Who could say? So this is the Ringed City, and the way this trailer's set up, and this is a minor spoiler. It's not actually a spoiler for the plot of the game, but like in the very beginning, there's a thing where, I'm just putting this in context for John here, where one of the pilgrims is like kind of looking out over this like real twisted cityscape here.
Yeah.
This is the end of the game. So when you go to the end of the game, there's like this area where like the entire world feels like it's very twisted up. Like it's like everything has been kind of mashed together with impossible angles. But all you really do in that area is walk from the beginning of it to the arena for where the last boss is.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like, I don't, and I can't tell if this is it for certain, because it could be something else. But the end of the game, they had this whole kind of like kingdoms all mashed up, laying on their sides. So there's a voiceover that talks about how there's an ancient city, or there's a ringed city that's kind of in here. Rings, of course, with the dark sign and stuff, is kind of a staple in the Dark Souls lexicon. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on here, because I know that. From Software has a tendency when they make trailers like this to make like this one shot looks a lot like the opening area of the game, the untended graves, and there's another shot here of somebody shooting a kind of a weird electric bow and arrow, and this actually looks a lot like the first DLC at its very end all. So it's hard to tell exactly what's going on here. There is one kind of there's an enemy here that's reminiscent of these big angel things that you see in the game. Kind of, I don't know if this is related to it or not, but it's one of those questions that everybody has, that it feels like those characters could have been fleshed out more. But I think that the biggest thing is there's a scene of a character touching this egg that has this kind of larger woman on it, and I don't want to say if I don't know. I feel like this could be Guinevere from Dark Souls 1, because she is mentioned in Dark Souls 3 a bunch. And she did have. There was always the question about whether Priscilla in Dark Souls 1 was her baby, right? So her having this egg, this hatched egg, kind of like, I don't know, or it could be somebody totally different. Who knows? In any case, this is coming out on March 28th.
March 28th.
Yep. John, I know that you've seen a lot of Dark Souls. What do you think when you look at this? It's pretty stock standard Dark Souls.
It looks like
stuff.
Dark Souls. It looks like a Dark Souls trailer.
Yeah, it really does. It doesn't.
So I don't really have much more to add over what you said because you're the Dark Souls expert here.
Yeah, it doesn't really say all that much because it spends so long in the very beginning. I mean, there's also the boss at the very end. This kind of like large, maybe kind of dragony thing.
Bat dragon
in a full of fire. Which, you know, I hate to be the jerk face, but do you remember? I don't know if you remember. You remember when we were playing the Bloodborne DLC, the old Hunters?
Yeah.
Remember how like one of the big bosses in there was just like a fiery version of the cleric beast from?
Yeah. No, I remember.
There's a scene in that trailer where that boss like rears up and roars. That's almost exactly what this boss is doing here, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I get it, Miyazaki. You like things that are on fire that roar, that are big.
It's like, so I can see them in the room now. So,
yeah.
We need a new boss. What do we got? Well, what's the biggest boss we had in the last game? Well, this one was a pretty good. All right, let's take him. But we need to make him better. We need to improve him. How can we improve him? We could set him on fire. Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Sir,
I love it.
He was on fire in the last one?
No. More on fire.
Oh, more on. Okay.
Yeah. Just triple the fire.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of nitty gritty to get into about like the things that are seen, some new weapons and stuff that are seen in this trailer. But I'll be honest, it's not. For these sorts of things, I think it looks good. I'm obviously going to play it.
Yes, of course you're obviously going to play it.
I'm not going to play it.
You're obviously going to play it, and then at some point after this DLC has been released, we're both going to play it for a Patreon
video. Shit. You hear that, people. As soon as we get done with Darksiders, John's just...
I just said sometime in the future.
He can't wait to play Dark Souls.
I just said sometime in the future because we've already played Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1.
True. And Bloodborne. And all the DLC. Except we never did that Dark Souls 2 DLC, but... all right, well, so Bandai Namco had a bunch of different trailers, but I actually feel like before we get to the next of the trailers that they put out, there was a really interesting trailer that might have bypassed a few people's attention, and that is the Bad Day at the Office trailer for The Surge. Now, I would not be surprised if you folks at home have forgotten The Surge. Because The Surge is the game being made by Deck 13, the people who made Lords of the Fallen. That's an awful lot like a cyber Dark Souls, where it's like this guy with kind of an exoskeleton fighting a bunch of robots with like giant swords and stuff, which looks potentially very interesting.
Yeah, it actually looks really cool.
And this trailer potentially looks very interesting as well, because it's kind of all about like, I don't know. John... I know that you and I don't live in a science fiction universe, but if you were like watching, well, some would say an episode of Black Mirror, but whatever. But let's say that you're at your job, right, and you're watching a YouTube video, and before that video, there's an advertisement that's like the copy for this Creo Corporation, where they're just like, where it's like, it's pick a name, Vorgath. Vorgath Industries is committed to bringing the future to you now. We have our hands in everything from biotechnology to computers to potential nanotech, space, ground, and beyond, making lives better. If you were watching that, wouldn't your brain just be like, is this like a viral marketing campaign for the new Resident Evil movie? Because if a corporation was trying to talk with the soothing lady voice and a bunch of stuff about how we're going to put cybernetic parts into people, I'd be like, this has got to be a movie or a video game. Like, if an actual corporation came to me and was like, we want to put chips in your head, I'd be like, no, bro, that's just, I've seen enough movies. This is going to be some sci-fi bullshit, right? Be taken over by Cybermen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you kind of went everywhere I was going to go with that. So I'm like, all right, well, there you go. No, the only thing I have a problem with this trailer. So it's like, do you want to join? And you click join. Then it shows the guy sitting on the table getting all the stuff attached to him and stuff. And then like it shows the thing drilling into the back of his neck, and the dude's awake.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then he starts to scream.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, if I'm gonna have robot parts, put me to sleep, motherfucker. I don't want to be awake for that.
Maybe they just cut the trailer in a weird way, and he wasn't screaming because he got the. Maybe he was asleep the entire time they were putting the thing in his head, but then he woke up. They're like, "Thank you for signing up with Creo as a special bonus before you leave your chair. Here's an exclusive screening of the trailer for Suicide Squad 2." And then he's like, "No!"
They just it's like, you're now done, and then they remove the catheter while he's away.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. This is coming out in May, and I'll be honest. Like, okay, Deck 13, Lords of the Fallen, it was medium, right? I don't feel like it's quite.
Wasn't terrible.
It's just the problem is that it wants to. It's like so close to being a Souls game, but then it just doesn't do it very well. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just kind of meh. And if you stack it up to Souls games, it's not great. Now, if there wasn't such a thing as a Souls game, I feel like it'd be fine. But Deck 13 says that they've learned a lot from the things that they did in Lords of the Fallen. And Focus Interactive is a very hit-or-miss publisher, right?
Yeah,
they put out a lot of shit.
True.
So in May, I guess we'll find out. Like, is it any good? Who can say?
Tune in to the dojo when it gets released.
Yes, exactly. All right, so back to Bandai Namco. We've got a Tekken 7 Rage and Sorrow trailer. This came out. When the hell did this come out? This came out a little bit.
Came out over the weekend.
A few days ago. I like this trailer a lot because it starts out with like baby. What's his name?
Jin.
Jin. Is it Jin? I thought Jin was that guy's kid.
Oh,
isn't that Kazama?
Kazama
or something like that? But like baby Kazama in his little baby Tekken outfit punching Heihachi in the dick.
Yeah.
Like on the side of a volcano.
Yeah.
Like,
and then Heihachi just kicks him in the face.
Like, why did you bring your baby? And he's like, I hate you. You killed my mom. And like his kicks just don't do anything. They honestly could have had him punching somewhere else that wasn't like right at dick level. I mean, who wants to punch Heihachi in the dick anyway? That's just, you don't tug on Superman's cape and you don't punch Heihachi in the dick.
I got it.
So yeah, this is this trailer has to go down in some sort of history. I mean, I guess it's kind of standard for Tekken.
It is.
But like, oh my God, you would think that this was like an action game, like a third-person adventure game or something. Like,
no, it's just a fighting game.
There's just all these people and all of this, like in these environments and all of this dialogue and all this heavy-handed bullshit, and there's people talking about fighting and
lasers shooting at buildings, lasers emitting from people.
And Heihachi cries not once but twice in this trailer.
Shit. 2
Heihachi cries. Nina Williams' outfit is tighter and shinier than it has ever been in the history of Tekken, as near as I could tell. They got like ladies with chain guns. I mean, it's just
Akuma's there.
It's bananas. It's just full on Tekken bananas.
Yeah.
It's a lovely bunch of bananas. I don't know. I've never really been into Tekken. Do you Tekken, bro? Do you?
I have played Tekken. I do like Tekken. I'm not like super versed in it. Like I've like other games. Like there are other games that I'm like super versed in the lore and everything with fighting games. But but yeah, I know Tekken well enough.
I remember playing like the shit out of Tekken 5, maybe.
Played a lot of Tekken Tag.
Whichever one was on the PlayStation 3. Whichever the first one on the PlayStation 3 was. I remember playing because they had like all the different characters had their own little story, and I remember playing through all of it because you know what? I'll be honest, Tekken actually has a pretty good story.
No, it's good.
I mean, it's redonkulous.
Yeah,
it's completely fucking stupid.
Oh yeah, no, it is.
But come on, what fighting game has a non-stupid storyline? I mean, we got Shadaloo and Street Fighter. That's completely stupid. We've got the Outland tournament.
Soul Calibur?
I don't even know what the story for Soul Calibur is. Voldo's weird? That's the story?
I mean, it's a cursed blade.
No. I'm putting that under the dumb storylines of fighting games.
All right.
I'm trying to think. What are the other big ones? Let's see. What are we forgetting here? It's Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, Smash Brothers? Who can say?
Smash Brothers, and then also... I know what it is. I just can't think of the franchise name all of a sudden. It's blanking on me.
Okay.
But I always used to, like, there was a point where I would, like, is that Dead or Alive?
Dead or Alive. No,
which is now porn.
Oh, Dead or Alive's. No, I've actually followed. I played the last Dead or Alive, and I was watching the story for Dead or Alive. The story for Dead or Alive is just as bananas as everything
no.
else.
I'm not saying it's not bananas. I'm just saying you were saying what game am I forgetting here? And I'm like, there is a game. I can't think of what it is. Like, what is it? Dead or Alive? That was the title.
And then our last trailer is for Ace Combat 7.
Hey,
which
I've never played any of these games.
Skies Unknown, which, yeah, it's funny to me because they keep putting out trailers for this new Ace Combat game, and there's two things. One is it does have PSVR support, so I'd really be interested in kind of getting my hands on, because a game like this, like a flight sim, that is perfect for VR because you can move your head around, but then your control stick controls the plane, so it feels very naturalistic. But man, this is one hell of a dramatic story trailer for a game about flying around airplanes and shooting at stuff.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I know nothing about Ace Combat. I've never played any of them. I didn't even know that there was like an in-depth story with cinematics and all such stuff.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Is Macross Plus.
A little bit.
Because there's like kind of like this older guy that seems like he's having a hard time flying, and then there's like all these computer-controlled drones and AI and stuff like that. But I gotta say that, I mean, for a franchise, I mean, like, I don't know what would have possessed Bandai Namco to put the amount of money that I'm seeing in this trailer, but like, there's a lot of good-looking environments and planes and people.
I can say that I've always heard good things. Like, I've always heard that they're super popular games.
Yeah, I have too. I mean, I have friends that don't really even play that many games who have played Ace Combat. This one though, all the marketing for Ace Combat 7 has done its job. Yeah. I really want to play Ace Combat 7. Like, I'd be interested if it was out next week. I'd be like, holy shit, cool. That's a game that I'd like to play. It looks like there's tons of missiles and explosions and drama and
just cue up the soundtrack to Top Gun and let's do this.
Actually, you know, it's funny because the music that they were playing during this it reminded me of Cowboy Bebop a lot.
Okay.
And there's even a point towards the end where one of the planes flies and one of the characters is like adios, and I was like, are you trying to do Cowboy Bebop? So yeah, Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown. Look forward to it. And then last, before, man, we are on point. We are just about at 30 minutes. So one more discussion and we will be at the halfway mark. So as far as like written news goes, and I don't want people to think that every week we're just going to be going over trailers. It's just that was what was out this week.
Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot.
There wasn't a big lot. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of like announcement stuff outside of the Marvel thing, but one thing that was announced was the release schedule for Resident Evil 7.
Yes.
Now, for DLC. Now, when we come back from break, I actually beat Resident Evil 7, so I'll do a little mini review, and then we'll answer like two questions or a question. But I liked Resident Evil 7. Unfortunately, it seems like Capcom is doing their normal Capcom bullshit when it comes to DLC.
Capcom's being Capcom?
Yep.
Capcom and all around town?
Yep. Capcom's going to Capcom. So the first DLC set, Banned Footage Volume 1, is going to come out on January 31st.
Yes.
Like a week after the game drops.
Yes.
Which is a little redonkulous.
Yes.
Like, there's not even, like, I can feel like a lot of people might not even have beaten the game by the time this stuff comes out. There's going to be one free DLC called I think it's like Not a Hero. I think that comes out a little bit later. But what's coming out is actually, these seem really weird. Like, here's the descriptions for them. We listed them on a previous podcast, but bedroom. Figure out how to escape from a locked room, but don't let Marguerite Baker know you've been out of bed. Nightmare. Fend off waves of enemies and survive until morning. And extra mode, Ethan Must Die. A tough as nails, separate from the tapes and story of the main game. Does not support PSVR. So I'm curious to know how this DLC is going to be integrated into the game, because like a fend off waves of enemies until morning, like that doesn't fit anywhere in the storyline. Like it doesn't. I mean, there's no part of the story.
I think they're tapes.
Okay, that makes a certain amount of sense.
They're VHS tapes, if I'm not mistaken.
That would make a certain amount of sense, because they do have that mechanic, just like in the demo where you put in a tape and then you kind of play that tape. You're playing as another person while the tape is going on. I don't know, though. The thing that's really weird, though, is that the description of these, especially Nightmare and Ethan Must Die mode, seem like they're very combat focused. And while Resident Evil does things very well, I don't feel like combat is really the focus of that game. Like, there is combat in it, and I appreciate the combat that's there, but it's not exactly Call of Duty, right? Like, you know, you can't even aim down the iron sights of guns, which is a little bit of an irritation when you're playing the game. So I don't know how well received. I mean, it just kind of, you know what it's like? You remember the first BioShock Infinite DLC that was just like challenge maps and stuff? Is like that. That's kind of how this feels to me, of like, well, why? Like, is this really going to add to the... Bedroom might actually add to the storyline of the game and contain things that would be kind of interesting. But Nightmare and Extra Mode, Ethan Must Die, don't really seem like they're going to be adding a lot to the actual plot of the game, which is kind of what I'd like. I'd like more story beats rather than just like, oh, survive, you know. And
here's a survival mode. Here's this mode. Here's... Yeah, I get you.
And then Volume 2, Banned Footage Volume 2 is coming on February 14th to the PS4 and other platforms on February 21st. And that's going to have 21, Gamble Life and Limb in a Deadly Game run by Lucas Baker. Daughters, see what the Baker family was like before the tragic events of Resident Evil 7. And Extra Mode, Jack's 55th birthday. Race against the clock to feed Jack tons of food in this comical extra game mode separate from the tapes and the main story. So it seems like between these two extra modes, the Ethan Must Die and Jack's 55th birthday, that those might be like launch them from the main title.
Might.
Because, feed and Jack cake doesn't seem like a thing that would really fit into the story. I actually think that the Daughters one sounds really interesting, because it would be interesting to see what the family was like before you got to the house.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen the family in the demo, and you've seen the house and how it's all dilapidated and stuff. I think it would be interesting to see it more kind of before it is where it is in the
I
game.
agree. I can agree with that.
So I don't know. What do we? Okay, so if the DLC is content that was cut from the game, or it was developed from the Square One, like there's going to be DLC and we're going to develop it concurrently with the game. I mean, is a week too short of a time to wait to put out DLC for a brand new game? I mean, for like people who bought the season pass, I feel like it'd be great for them, because
I think it's great for them. Here's kind of where I'm torn on it. I feel like for this game, it might be too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you give it a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like for other games, such as, say, Capcom's Dead Rising 4, they haven't released that Frank Rising DLC yet.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Which is supposed to be the ending of the true ending of the game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not out yet. And that should have been out like by New Year's.
That should have been day one DLC, right?
Yeah.
It should have been day one.
I don't necessarily need it to be day one, but it should have been at the end, like New Year's, like by the end of the month. I feel like that should have been. The fact that it's not, because I actually had this complaint when we talked about it on the podcast previously, where I said, hey, if this true ending doesn't come out until June, who the fuck cares about playing a Christmas game in June?
True. Yeah.
And it looks like that's what it's going to be, even though they still haven't announced a release date for it. But this, I feel like it's too soon. But at the same time, I feel like for another game, like had I gotten it that soon for Dead Rising 4, I would have been like, oh yeah, no, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
But it's kind of a weird thing
It
where
depends on the game.
Yeah, it depends on the game, and I haven't actually played the Resident Evil 7 yet, so I can't say, oh yeah, no, I totally.
Well, none of this seems like it. This seems like more traditional DLC, right?
Yeah.
Like that you can play the game, you can beat the game. None of this seems like it's going to be integral to the game. Even the free DLC, which I'm not going to talk about because it's a spoiler, that's supposed to be out in, I believe it's March. That's interesting, but it's such a side part of the game. It's such a kind of like, what? That would be interesting. Now, I will say this, though. It is a little bit irritating when you get to the end of Resident Evil 7 and at the end of the credits, it actually puts up like kind of an ad for that DLC. But that's free DLC. I don't know. To be honest, you know what? I'm going to back it all the way up to my official Jeff stance on DLC. If you don't like DLC and you don't want there to be DLC, you have to not buy the DLC. You have to knuckle down and say, I'm not going to buy it no matter how good it looks. I don't care if it's Bloodborne DLC that finishes the game. I don't care if it's Call of Duty's DLC that has Kevin Smith in it. I don't care if I liked Resident Evil and I'd like to see more of it. if you'd want there to not be DLC, the only way for there not to be DLC is that we all together have to say we're not going to buy it, because that's the only way the companies will stop selling it. As long as we keep buying it, they'll fucking keep selling it. I mean, we've seen that already. I mean, that shit with Dead Rising 4 to me is just ridiculous. So, and you know what, John? Woo! That's like 35 minutes right there. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Resident Evil 7, and then we're going to answer like a question or two for the new and improved, shorter, more bite-sized, more easy to listen to when you're walking your dog just once instead of having to stop and then start it back up again, Rage Select Podcast. So stick around!
That was a mouthful.
Yes, it is! And we are back with the new, extra special, new and improved 50% shorter podcast. Woo! I mean, I don't know. It's shorter, but it's more concentrated. It's a right in your face podcast.
All right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Calm down, John. God damn.
Hey, I don't know. You got all the excitement for me.
I do. So hey, we got a few questions, but before we get to them, let's talk a little bit about Resident Evil 7.
All right. I haven't played it yet.
I managed
at all.
to beat it last night.
Oh, good for you.
Well, yeah. So I really like Resident Evil 7.
Oh, that's good.
So for those of you who have been living under a rock, it's more let's see. So first off, it's the first time in this, well, no, it's not the first time in the series, but it is a first person game. It's the first time I think in the numbered series where it's been a first person game, because there was the
Umbrella Corps,
well, that one, and there was another one. Yeah. So but yeah, it's first person. It's a much kind of grittier, grimier aesthetic. It's more like PT or Outlast than it is the kind of, you know what? What's really interesting about it is that it in a lot of ways does not feel like a Japanese game. You know how Japanese games, I was playing Yakuza 0, and I was remembering how a lot of times Japanese games are very kind of they've like a high frame rate and a very clean art style, but they're very stiff, right?
Okay, yeah.
Whereas this is just a very grimy game. You know, there's just a lot of goop and junk and stuff. And you play as Ethan, a character whose wife has been missing, and she sends you a message and is like, "I'm at this place. I'm in this house. Come get me." And you go, and then yada yada yada. Bad things.
Yeah, well.
No, so then you go to the house and you knock on the front door, and she opens the door and she's like, "Thanks for picking me up." And you're like, "Great." She's like, "I'm too drunk to drive." And
Game over.
And then you're done. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's a real scary game. No, it's good. I like the aesthetic. I like the art style. It's basically kind of a medium grade adventure / first person shooter. Like, it doesn't have super good controls for the first person.
Yeah.
And there are guns and weapons and stuff in the game. One of the things I feel like is a little sticks out a little bit to me is that when you have a gun and you hold down the L2 button, it kind of zooms in a little bit and puts a reticle on the screen. I would have really enjoyed having iron sights, because there's a lot of shooting in this game. It's very much a throwback to original Resident Evil, and like giving you a very limited number of bullets and then giving you more enemies that you can really deal with the number of bullets that you have.
Yeah.
I think that it's really smart the way that it brings in the tapes aspect to take you to different places. Like, it's an interesting framing device to take you to show you a flashback, right, of giving you a tape, and then you're watching the tape, and the tape is a flashback to a thing that's happened. So, and in a lot of ways, it's interesting because you can actually affect things in the world, or you can get, like, for instance, in the demo.
Yeah, like with the unlocking the drawer.
Well, not yeah, but like, if you think about it, the way that the framing device of the tapes works in the game is so, you know, when you play the demo, you watch the tape, and the one thing that the tape shows you is that there is a secret handle in the fireplace for you to pull to unlock that little door. Well, if you already know that, then you don't need to watch the tape. You could basically just bypass it because you know where the thing is. And it's actually kind of smartly laid out that way, where there's parts of it where the tape is giving you a gameplay element that's showing you this kind of tutorializing what you are then going to do when you go into that area later on. Like, it's giving you a different look at the layout of the area and showing you kind of what you're going to do as far as puzzles go. And I really like that.
Yeah.
On the downside, I will say that the back half of the game, it's not quite as good. And it actually reminds me of Amanda and I playing Alan Wake. And I think that what's interesting about Alan Wake as opposed to Resident Evil is that Alan Wake keeps taking all your shit away. So, Alan will finish a chapter and then he starts the next chapter. He doesn't even have a flashlight, even though he needs a flashlight. Whereas here, you've got the old Resident Evil box mechanic of you've got a stash where you put stuff and then you can pick it up later. And by the end of the game, I was being careful with the amount of ammunition and the amount of resources that I was trying to. Like, I was actually doing that thing that you probably know, John, where it's like you save your game and then you go to a location and then you get fucked up in that location and you're like, you know what? Now that I know, I could do that better. And so you just reload your game and then go back and try to do it without using all of your bullets and all of your healing items. So by the end of the game, I had a lot of extra stuff. And I was able to use it. So the back half of the game started to become a little bit less scary and more kind of like action, like a medium tier action game. So here's the thing. By all means, it is not a perfect game.
Yeah.
It has problems. It has some issues. There are people online who think that there's going to be people out there. It's about 10 to 11. I beat it in 10 hours. And that was with a fair number of deaths and figuring stuff out. And there's actually a lot of reason to go back and replay through the game because there's different, just like Resident Evil, there's like items that you'll get for beating the game in a certain amount of time or finding all of these things or doing all of this. And so there is a fair amount of replayability, but there's nothing like multiplayer. It is about 10 hours long. And once you've beaten the game once and you know like where you're going and what you're doing, I feel like you could beat it way faster. Like,
oh no, there are people already speedrunning.
Well, I know I was looking at a website that says that there's some stuff you get if you beat the game in 4 hours. And I was like, yeah, if you didn't watch any of the tapes and if you knew exactly where you were going, you could probably beat that game in under 4 hours, not even breaking too much of a sweat. But all in all, I liked it. Now, a lot of that is probably going to depend for people who are fans of the franchise. If you're expecting something like Resident Evil 4, 5, or 6, it's not that. It's more like a first-person version of Resident Evil 1. It's a lot more finding the things that you need to unlock this door, or finding the right key to get into this part.
So like going in the room, turning the statue to the left, so that it drops a manuscript that you have to read to find out that in this other room is a safe, but you don't have the combination code for it. But you know that the combination code is in this other place.
Yes.
That if you turn that counterclockwise, it gives you the combination code. You can go to the safe, unlock it, and it gives you a jewel that you have to then take to the kitchen and put it into a boiling pot of water.
Right.
And it turns out it's not a jewel.
No.
It's something else.
Yes.
That then you can then use to get to the next room.
Yes. It's some bullshit like that. But I liked it. There was actually there was one big kind of like story, like a choice moment where you get a choice between doing a thing. And I'm actually kind of curious to go back and see if I make a different choice, if that makes the second half of the game kind of any different. It doesn't have a lot to do with previous Resident Evils. It's kind of its own thing. So, if you're expecting Wesker to show up at the 11th hour, that's not going to happen. There are ties to the previous Resident Evil universe, but this is definitely a step in a different direction. So if you were like, oh man, what I really want out of this game is more Resident Evil 4, 5, or 6.
What happened to Leon? What's Leon doing right now?
There is no Leon in this game at all. Which I actually thought would be really funny.
None of the president's daughter.
If he showed up at one point. I really want a Resident Evil game where Alice from the movie shows up and then gets immediately killed. But I liked it. I think that it does exactly what I wanted Resident Evil to do. It's going in a different direction, different art style, different gameplay style. You'll have to make your own decision about whether a single player game that you can beat pretty easily is worth $60. I personally... I couldn't put it down, and this is the first game of 2017 that I've just been like, I really want to beat this game. Like, I want to see where this is going. It kept pulling me forward, and I liked where it got to.
And that's good. I mean, I've read some stuff.
Yeah. I
don't know like spoilers, so I can't talk about it. But I've also heard that the VR experience is a little weird.
Yeah.
But it's serviceable. It's
I really would like to try that out. I don't have a PSVR.
Yeah, but I've heard this thing where instead of being able to turn, like your controller doesn't do anything with turning. It's actually your head, wherever your head is facing, that's where you're turning.
Yeah.
And then when you zoom in, your head is controlling where the reticle is for the gun. And then it also has like a button that you can hit to turn, like or not button, but when you actually go to, like if you do the thing to turn, it would normally be to turn.
Right analog stick.
It moves you like 30 degrees to the left or 30 degrees to the right.
Oh, so it moves like a set increment.
Yeah.
And then you're supposed to use the head for the fine
for
tracking.
the fine tuning. I've heard that's a little janky, especially if you're not standing up. Like people, I've read that people like, I had to play this game standing up because that movement started fucking me over, like visually.
I can honestly say that first person is hard in VR because you technically are moving around with the sticking your hands, but then you're also moving your head at the same time. So you have some questions as to like, do you make the head a virtual head, or do you make the head like your right analog stick, like you're moving? I think it works better when there's like an indicator on your screen of where your body is pointing, and so then you move your head, but your body is still facing in that direction. I think it takes a little bit of getting used to, though, which is difficult. But anyway, I will say that there is a little bit of a lack of diversity in the enemies in the game. There aren't that many different enemies in the game, and by the end of the game, the ones that they had have started to get a little bit old because there's only really a few different variations on. There's really only two types of enemies in the game. There's bosses, and then there's the other things, and the other things. There's just like 3 or 4 different variations on the same thing. Like some are faster, some are stronger, some are medium, some have a long range. But so they probably could have used more of that. Like I kind of miss the lickers and the regenerators and giant spider bosses. But
the giant snake.
Yeah, that would have been interesting because giant snake really wouldn't have fit well with their aesthetic. But but still. I liked it, and I liked the story, and so far, it's probably going to be one of those things that really sticks with me. And I got to give Capcom props for taking a chance because it really is something that could probably going to piss off a huge amount of Resident Evil fans who are looking for more of that action zombie shooting stuff.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. Well, we got time for maybe a question, maybe two. I got one question here from Katie J, who says, "Dear Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, for the life of me, I'm surprised at how fun the Power Rangers beat-em-up is. It's not the best beat-em-up side-scroller, but it's still fun. My question is this: why do you think there is a lack of Contra-style shooters or Double Dragon-style beat-em-ups in the indie biz? I see lots of niche RPGs that have decent to good stories, but where are all the fun beat-em-ups and Contra shooters? I've been a loyal patron for the better part of a year, and it will continue into the foreseeable future. Thank you for answering my question. Your loyal White Ranger, Katie J." Oh, okay, I see. I think we talked about this a little bit during the Power Rangers video of why we don't see more, like the beat-em-up genre is...
Well, it was originally designed to be kind of a arcadey, eat your coins.
Yeah,
thing.
I guess so.
Like that was kind of like it was. They were kind of designed to eat the coins that you like. They wanted your money, so you would always want. They would be designed so you'd always die and have to put in more quarters, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, when you translate that to a console, it's kind of monotonous.
Yeah, because you're never actually going to. You either have to set up a fail state, like you have 2 lives, and if you don't get to the end of the level, you have to start the level over. Like I actually went back to try to play the Power Rangers game by myself, and I started on level 4 or whatever we ended on, and I just couldn't get anywhere. I was getting my ass kicked because I hadn't powered up my character enough. I would probably say though, Katie, that the things that you're describing, like the RPGs. A lot of RPG Maker stuff is easier to make, honestly. Then there's stuff like the kind of pixel-based roguelikes and stuff like that. I think there's a genre for those that is well established. That's full of. It's like when you're on Steam and you make a shitty horror game, right? You know that there's going to be a certain number of people who are going to play your shitty horror game because there's a certain number of people that play every shitty horror game. I mean, for fuck's sake, Lucius got a sequel, and that game wasn't very good to begin with. So I feel like there are plenty of people out there who will play. I mean, just look at the number of dating sims that are on Steam. Is that it's probably marketing to your demographic. Like, is it a DayZ / Minecraft type of game? Is it a horror game? Is it an RPG? Whereas side scrollers and beat 'em ups, I also feel like those take a little bit more. I don't want to denigrate developers, but like a good Contra style side scroller takes a deft touch, because you have to be able to make it challenging enough to challenge the player, but not so challenging that they can't beat it. But I agree that I'd like to see more of those. Like, I remember there was a game on the 360 think it was like one of the first games that I reviewed on Spill called Contra Hardcore.
Yeah.
And it was actually really cool because it was like, Contra, you have 3 lives, but then you would get credits every time you ran through the game that would let you power up. So by the time you powered up to a certain level, you just waste the first level without taking a single shot. But then there was like a hardcore mode for people who just wanted to do that. I'd love to see more Contra games. Who owns Contra? Is that Capcom? Is it Konami?
It's Konami.
Well, good luck. They will never be.
Well, hey, they did release Bomberman. They're already putting a Bomberman on the Switch. So
Never liked Bomberman much.
I know, but I'm just saying. People say, Konami's out, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're just, I don't know. Fuck it.
John, we're all just waiting for Metal Gear, what's it called? Metal Gear Sky Portal or Metal Gear Zombie Head?
Metal Gear shell of its former self.
Yeah. Unicorn Zombies. What the fuck is that?
I don't know what it's called.
I've forgotten already. That's how much of an impact it made on me. All right, this next one comes in from Brian, and Brian is talking about a problem that you and I specifically have had that you have specifically called me out for. So let's
okay.
Brian says, Jeff, I have a problem. Ever since playing Dark Souls, I can't stop comparing games to Dark Souls. From replaying older games like Majora's Mask, running across Gothic architecture, or just seeing a certain kind of environment, I often find myself saying, it's like Dark Souls. It's gotten bad enough that I've been called out for it more than a few times, so I try not to say it as much. But sometimes you just can't stop a Dark Souls moment. Dark Souls isn't even my favorite game. It's just that it has such a large grab bag of inspirations from past greats, as well as being very influential since its release, that it's hard not to draw comparisons. Thanks for your content, and here's to even more, Brian. So I guess Brian didn't actually ask a question there, but...
you do have that problem.
I kind of do have that. What can I say? It's one of my favorite franchises, and
it has a stamina bar. Oh my god, this game is like Dark Souls. Jeff, it's not. Jeff, it's a fighting game, but it's like a fighting game of Dark Souls.
Yeah, no, that's happened. That's definitely happened before. I think that. Okay, so I actually think that I don't think I'm completely off base most of the time, because I feel like
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah,
like, I totally understand what you're saying when you say it. But yeah, you do sometimes kind of. It's like, God damn it, Jeff.
I guess it's just what probably the problem is. Well, this make for an interesting 5-minute conversation. Can you think of a game that was like, and let's use Demon Souls because that's the first one, that was like Demon Souls before Demon Souls? Something that did one of a few different things. Stamina, like a regenerating resource management as the primary combat mechanic, a la stamina is used for dodging, attacking, and blocking. So it's like you have to manage that. That's the major thing you have to be looking at the entire time. Indirect storytelling of hiding the narrative in item descriptions, where by playing the game, you wouldn't normally get the whole story, but if you go in and you look at stuff, then you can find the more extended story if you're willing to dig. And then the really kind of brutal difficulty that's tough but fair. Because I feel like there's like bullet hells, right, that are tough, but I don't think they're fair, because I think it's just you find the hitbox for your ship, and then it's whether you can weave your tiny pixel in between 6 billion different other pixels, right?
I'm going to say something.
Okay.
It's not exact. It's not an exact match.
Okay.
But it's actually the first time that anytime someone brings this up that it's the first thing I think of.
Okay.
The first Mega Man. Because the story's not in the game. Like, you literally press start and you're in the game on the select screen. It doesn't tell you why you're doing what you're doing or what you're doing.
Okay.
And it just throws you in the levels, and then you beat the game. If you want story, you got to go in the instruction booklet. The game's it's tough but fair. Like, it is tough but fair.
Yeah.
And it's got, like, you don't like in that one you don't have the charge up. It's just it's just the standard shooting.
There's a lot of resource management.
Yeah, there is resource management going on. And I'm not saying that Mega Man is Dark Souls or Dark Souls is Mega Man.
No, that's what you're saying. I know that's what you're saying.
But
everything is Mega Man from here on out.
Fuck yeah. But no, it's like, a lot of the cinematic aspect of Mega Man, of what we know to be Mega Man, didn't happen until Mega Man 2.
Right. Yeah.
Because that, and then even Mega Man 3 kind of abandoned some of that and went back to the way Mega Man 1 was a little bit.
I really don't think that Mega Man had much in the way of story until X, because even the ones on the NES, they had some story, but the Mega Man 2 just climbs to the tower and then he puts on the helmet and then you just fucking go, right? Like there's a little bit of it a little bit further towards the end, but I feel like Mega Man X was really where you started to get like Dr. Light's calling to tell you about what's going on in the world, as opposed to, I don't know.
That was definitely more story, but there was story to it. There was the whole thing with, especially Mega Man 3, where you got Proto Man and who is Proto Man? Why, or who is Breakman and why is he? Oh, well, Breakman is Proto Man. Oh shit, who's Proto Man? Proto Man's your older brother. Why is he? Okay, well, why haven't a friend? Well, we disabled him. That kind of thing. Like there's this whole thing of even Mega Man 2 starts off with, in the year 2000X, Dr. Wily built 8 robots.
Yeah.
And you defeated Dr. Wily and his robots. Now he's back,
right,
with 8 new robots. There is story there, but and you kind of have to piece it together and even make some of it up in your head a little bit, which you do with Dark Souls.
Yeah,
not just you, but everyone does. But
are you gonna read my fan fiction again?
Well, if you'd stop emailing it to me. That's the first, because when you talk about difficult games, that's always the game I always associated with difficult games. But at the same time, games that were fair
actually, you know what? Now that you say that, there's probably a good case to be made. Not necessarily with the stamina management, but actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. Saying that actually got my brain thinking about how, like, there was a lot of NES games that didn't have story inside of the game, where you had to read the booklet. You had to read the book that came with the game. The Legend of Zelda, It's Dangerous to Go Alone. Take this. Like, if you didn't read the instruction booklet for Zelda, you have no idea who you were or what you were doing. You wouldn't even know the name of the main character, right? Yeah. Like maybe at the very end of the game, I think Zelda might say, "Thank you for saving me, Link." But like, think about Zelda. You just like pop out into the world. You walk in that cave.
Mario Brothers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
definitely.
The princess is in another castle. That's pretty much all you get told.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even get told that, hey, the princess has been kidnapped by Bowser. It's just literally starts you on a screen.
Yep.
And you keep going until it's like, hey, Mario, the princess is in another castle. You got to go save her.
And then back to the whole stamina management / resource management thing. Like, the reason that I keep hoarding all of my shit in Alan Wake is because I cut my teeth on an era of gaming where, like, if somebody gives you a bazooka, you wait to use that shit until you get to a boss. You don't just pull the bazooka out and start using it. No, I only got 5 shots. I got to wait for the boss. To saving, kind of making a decision between, like, using something to get further in the game or saving it because there's going to be a further challenge ahead. Yeah, there's probably a lot of that just comes directly. It's just kind of like a weird updating of those concepts into
Demon Souls, and people have even talked about when Dark Souls first came out, and even referenced Demon Souls in regards to it, but it seemed to have a mentality, the way you played it was very much an old school, like, NES mentality.
Yeah.
And a lot of people made that comparisons early on, because that's what I kept remember hearing is like, oh man, this is like those old Nintendo NES games that were fucking hard, but you played them and you beat them, and there wasn't a whole lot of story there, but for what story there was, you fucking cherished it, and it's a harken back to those days in gaming, but with current generation, and it's fucking awesome because of it.
Kind of like how, I remember that I used to play, speaking of Contra from the previous one, like, I used to play Contra so much that I could beat Contra with just the standard lives. I didn't need the Konami code, because I would play one game and maybe that's what it is that it's such a throwback to that style of, you're going to play this game and you're going to play it a lot and you're going to get good at it, noob, because that's the only way to play this game. Whereas when you look at things like what the Prince of Persia game with Nolan North, where, like, you literally couldn't die.
Oh yeah.
Like, you would fall and it would just be like, whoop, back, nope. And the girl would appear and just throw you back up to whatever ledge you just missed or whatever.
Yeah.
Or games where if you just put your mind to it and keep banging your head up against it, you can eventually move to the next checkpoint and then it's fine and you just keep on going. Whereas, Souls really makes you absorb the mechanics of the game, which is, as you rightly pointed out, a very old idea.
Yeah,
A very
and even the
idea.
looking for story. I mean, and if you look at old NES games, like the ones that did have story in them, a lot of times you were given very little amounts of story, and it was a little bit here, a little bit there, and you had to kind of fill in the gaps, which you do with Dark Souls as well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, one more question, then we're going to be done. Yeah, that would be perfect. Paul C. writes in and says, good morrow, Grandmaster Jeff and Loyal Knight John. My question is a spin on last week's question about fictional untold stories. Fantasy, sci-fi, apocalypse, spoopy monsters, or even a true love story between a man and his dog. Unless it's that movie where the dog keeps dying to just be reborn into another dog, and each time he comes back to life, it's to make someone else happy until it dies again. It's called A Dog's Purpose. Okay, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
That's the A Dog's Purpose. It's a movie. It's coming out in theaters soon.
Okay, where a dog dies over and over again.
That's actually the I don't know if you've heard about the controversies for that. There was apparently a second team that was shooting, and there was a dog.
The one that puts his dog in the water.
Yeah, that movie. That's what that is.
Gross. Anyway, what type of story do you feel is something you would like to see told in either already created worlds, like detective stories in Star Wars, or the chosen kid hero actually wants to be evil, or a new story in a genre? Man, Paul, you're writing the hell out of this email. Or a new story in a genre where maybe someone finally makes that paradox where they met themselves and it turns out nothing happens. He keeps meeting himself until he fills a room and have to decide how to live out their lives. You got to cut down on these examples, bro. Maybe a good Cowboys versus Aliens movie. I actually like to hear the cast talk about the story idea, and sorry if this question is too long. God, I can give my unused Netflix money to a site that makes me laugh, policy. So let's untangle this email a little bit. I didn't even read all of it. Policy is basically saying, what is a story that you would like to see that you don't get to see normally? So, and his examples were maybe a story in a world that's not about that, kind of the Star Wars detective story, or maybe like a different take on the chosen one is actually an asshole, or like, I don't know. What do you think?
It's weird because like I want to see these like stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's already being done in comics. Like it's already been done in comic books. Like that's the weird thing. But I want to see it in like a movie or a TV series or a video game or something.
Okay.
Like the Star Wars thing. The thing that I fucking love is there's a comic called Agent of the Empire. It's essentially 007 in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and it's essentially he's an agent. He's 007 for the Empire. And it's this whole story, spy espionage thing done in the Star Wars universe. And I think that would be an awesome Star Wars story, like a side, like one of their little Star Wars film or whatever.
Oh, when I played Star Wars The Old Republic, I loved playing as the agent.
Yeah.
Like, I loved I loved it when they talked to each other because they're just like, these fucking space wizards are out here. They're just fucking everything up, and now we got to come in and fix it because they're all just like hate and suffering. It's like there's a government on that planet that somebody has to deal with.
But just do a spy James Bond style flick, but in the Star Wars universe. I think that'd be a lot of fun, especially do a movie that's from the Empire's point of view because we haven't gotten that, and I think that would be interesting to see. Now. Otherwise, kind of something you there's a book called Birthright that I think is really good, in which it starts off with the idea of those stories where the kid gets transported to a fantastical world and he's the chosen one that's supposed to defeat the ultimate evil.
Sure.
It's essentially about what happens after that. Yeah. Like, because, at the end of it, it ends with him defeating the ultimate evil and then going home, and then that's credits roll. Yeah. Well, there's a little bit different than that, and there's a bit of a twist with the ending, or with when the first issue is a bit of a twist that I think is interesting. But it's about essentially this kid who grows up to be an adult. Yeah. And then goes home. Yeah. And no time has passed, maybe only like a few years have passed, but he's a full-fledged adult at this point because he's lived this entire life in this world, but it's maybe been like a year in our time. And it's him kind of, dealing with the aftermath of that, and also kind of dealing with the fact that he's maybe not the chosen one that that was supposed to go there.
Yeah.
And maybe not as good of a person as he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of interesting. Like that kind of stuff interests me. Like let's start with the familiar and then let's see where it goes after that. Let's change one little aspect.
I had an idea for a story that was like that, where it's like a story about a kid, and you guys can't steal this shit from me. It was a story about a kid where it's like a kid and this mystical entity shows up. You know what? I don't know. This is such a good idea. I'm going to keep this one to myself. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cock tease the audience. I don't mean to tease the audience. I will say, though, that I've been saying it for years, and if you want to know the question, I want to see a zombie movie where the zombies are like, where I want to see a movie about a zombie apocalypse where people win in the end. And the thing is that I honestly, for all these years, and I'm sorry to the people who are just like, oh, here goes Jeff again, blah, blah, blah.
You want what the actual book was for World War Z.
No, I don't even want that. Because in World War Z, it's like the zombie apocalypse like kind of destroyed a lot of places and it took time to rally back. I want it to be like, it's a war between us and the undead, but we're not losing. We're winning, but it's horrible and it's slow and we're doing it like one day at a time. But I just want it to be the sort of thing where...
Or do you want it like the end of Shaun of the Dead?
No, not like that. Not like that. Like, I think it would be nice to maybe say, like, to start your movie, right? Start your movie off, and in the first 15 or 20 minutes, do like the beginning of World War Z, right? Yeah. Show the apocalypse starting. And then just be like 9 months later, and we're following our characters, and they're in a world that still has zombies in it, but there's an organized resistance against those zombies. There's an army that's trying to deal with them. Different countries are doing different things. There are parts of the United States that are kind of like overrun, and there are parts that are not. And there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, well, we're out there killing zombies, but there's a lot of them because they're fucking the dead, right? We've got all these new ideas we've got all these new things about how to deal with people when they die to make sure they don't come back now that we're all... Pick your zombie lore of choice, right? But the thing is that I feel like it would be nice to see a zombie story that was reframed in a way where humanity uses all of the advantages that humanity has as a species instead of immediately forgetting all of those things and becoming a big murder, rapey, kill... Like, everybody just immediately forgets that there's a reason that we band together and don't murder each other on a daily basis. And the reason is, like, lattes and houses and security and cars and the internet and shit, right? That, like, when we work together, we can do amazing things. And that, yeah, okay, there's a zombie apocalypse and it's real dangerous out there. But in war, people band together, right? Because they have a greater chance of survival if you fight as a team than if you fight by yourself. So I'd like to see a zombie apocalypse where people don't just immediately fucking go crazy and wander around, a wasteland.
Okay.
I'd also be really interested. I like the idea of doing something like I Am Legend, but in a fantasy setting. Like have a you start your movie kind of Lord of the Rings style with blah 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 blah, but then like at a certain point shift over to like the perspective of the orcs where they're just like, oh fuck, what is it? Adventurers, fuck, run! Like, they come over here and they just kill us, and we've tried to go to town and talk to them, but we don't know how to speak their language, and so they always try to murder us because we're so big and we're green, we got these big tusks, but we're just trying to do our thing. Like, I kind of like the idea of kind of having, how they have that story, that fantasy story trope of, evil has risen and taken over the entire world, and now you have a small group that has to come back. We'll just flip the script on that, where it's like good has taken over and destroyed our old master and whatever, kind of like Overlord the game, right?
Yeah.
And now a small plucky band of orcs and goblins and werewolves and liches have to band together to bring darkness back to the world and create the apocalypse or something like that. Because, you just get tired of watching that hero's journey over and over and over again. So I also think it'd be nice to have a Marvel movie that had a little bit more of a morally ambiguous character. That's why I kind of want the Punisher to be more front and center.
Well, he's going to be getting his own Netflix series.
Yeah, I know. What are the other... Marvel's got some other morally ambiguous heroes, right? Where they're kind of anti-heroes.
I mean, Venom is kind of that... I know they do, but I mean, technically Deadpool is morally ambiguous, but
Yeah.
he wants to do good, but at the same time, all his instincts tell him to do others.
Man,
but,
I don't know. The Deadpool movie is one thing, but in the comics, like, he's not roommates with that old lady. She's a prisoner in the house that he lives in. Like, so anyway, but that's it.
All right.
We're done.
Hey.
On a 1 hour podcast or right around there.
Probably a little bit over.
A little slightly, but we're below the 2 hour mark by far and below the 2.5 hour mark by more than,
We did it.
So here's the thing, folks. Mail@rageselect.com is the email address to send in questions. But I really want to hear what you guys think down in the comment section about this. This is way easier for me. So if you guys would like a less rambling, more targeted weekly podcast, let me know. And please do let me know, because the only way I can't tell.
I do feel like we were a little rambly towards the end.
Slightly, but less than normal.
Yeah.
Right. So let us know, and even if you don't normally comment, maybe make it on the website. If you go to Rage Select and you go to this podcast, you could technically make a discuss comment anonymously, right? You just have to put in some bullshit email address. But I really would like people to kind of weigh in and let us know what you think, because this is honestly, if people like this shorter format, it's way easier for us. It's fewer stories, it's more targeted approach, and it means that John doesn't have to come over here and sit here for like 4.5 hours, right? So, even though John is giving me kind of a weird look, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, let us know what you think down in the comments, or send us an email to mail@rageselect.com. Let us know what you think. And with that, we're done.